This video is brought to you by my supporters on Patreon. Hey guys, I'm here with a video showing you how I created my Vanellope cosplay, and be prepared, this is going to be a very long video. Anyways, I took this brown fabric, and I'm not sure what kind of fabric it is. It's just something I found at a wholesale fabric store. It's like very stiff satiny material almost, and I started creating the pleated skirt with it. So what I did to create the pleats was I created one pleat that was 4 inches wide, and then I placed a ruler on top of that pleat so that the 4-inch mark was at the edge of the pleat. And then I took the unpleated fabric and pulled that up and folded that at the 2-inch mark when the ruler is laid flat as it is here. So that fabric that I'm pulling forward, I'm stopping and folding it back over once it hits the 2-inch mark to create the next pleat. And then I went and laid my ruler again on top of that so that the 4-inch marker was at the edge, and then pulled the fabric that's not pleated over so that it laid down on the 2-inch mark. So they're like 4-inch wide pleats, but 2 inches of them are showing. So there's a 2-inch visible gap in between each pleat. Make sure to pin or clip that all down as you go along so that your pleats don't come undone. And to figure out the length that I needed the skirt to be, I just cut one big long rectangle and kept pleating, trying it on every so often to see if it was long enough, and then stopped when it was. So here I'm going ahead and I'm sewing down the pleats along what's going to be the top edge of the skirt, just so that they stay in place. Something I didn't do until later, but you will see a video clip of it, was fold over the bottom edge of the skirt, so like hem it so that it's nice and clean looking. I didn't do that until later. I recommend doing that before you pleat your skirt, and ironing that before you pleat your skirt. It makes stuff so much easier. I didn't do it until after I had already pleated and ironed my skirt. I should also note that when sewing this down, I went ahead and sewed down the edge of each pleat about 1 inch or 2, just to make sure that these pleats were going to stay pleated.
Face to face, I found my pain beneath the lies and broken dreams. Lost the love I had in me. It tore me.
Here's that part I was talking about earlier, where I didn't sew down the hem of the bottom part of the skirt until after I had already sewn the pleats in place. No worries though, because this was just one layer of the skirt. Her skirt has 2 layers, so you're going to have to do this entire process twice, but with one layer of the skirt about a couple inches longer than the other layer of the skirt, because the top layer is like 2 or 3 inches shorter than the bottom layer. So when it came to the bottom layer, I made sure to do this part before I pleated it. And now we're on to what is probably the most important part of the skirt, or the most important step, and that is ironing down all of your pleats. You want to make sure to do this because that's the only way that your pleats are going to stay pleated and look nice and crisp, because she has some very sharp edges going on her skirt.
This one for the person who feels alone, This one for the hero who has no home. This one for the one who lives.
So at this point, I have pleated the top and bottom layers of the skirt, pinned those together, and pinned on the waistband, which is again just another long rectangle that I had folded over. So it's about 2 inches wide when folded, which means it was a 4-inch very long rectangle. And what I'm doing here is I'm cutting off the excess. I made sure to leave a little bit of excess at the end of my skirt in case I needed it, and then tried everything on together while it was pinned to see if it was all gonna fit. And then when it was going to fit, or when I was able to mark where it was going to fit, I went ahead and just cut straight down there and readjusted the pleats a teeny bit because they did need to be unpleated in order to get a zipper in there. Otherwise, it was too much fabric going on. Once I have those pleats readjusted, I go ahead and iron it out again because I did have to just remove an entire pleat altogether, which meant I had to iron out the crease that was there from when I had ironed the pleat in the first place. And then once that's ironed out, I go ahead and I repin everything back the way it was. I just use a straight stitch to sew all the layers together. So the bottom layer to the top layer and the waistband on top of that. And then we sew the entire thing again. There is a lot of sewing. Then we iron the entire thing again. There's a lot of ironing involved in this skirt. And here I'm just ironing it so that the waistband is lying flat. I've also went ahead and I've sewn up the back of the skirt, and I'm ironing that seam open because I'm going to seam rip like the top half section of the skirt so that I can attach a zipper, and having these seams ironed before I do that made it so much easier to attach the zipper.
Baby, why do I love the way you always, always leave me? Why do I, baby, why do I love the touch but never love the feeling?
Once I have my zipper pinned into place, I go ahead and take my sewing machine and sew it into place. And I use a zipper foot and a straight stitch to do this. Cut off the excess zipper, clean up the loose threads, and the skirt is done. On to the jacket. I bought this mint green hoodie off of eBay and decided to alter that to make her jacket. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding the stitches above her pocket on her jacket with this hot pink yarn, and it's one of the thicker strands types. I don't know what you call it. Thicker kinds of yarn that are like twisted or braided, and it's like noticeably braided. If you look at it, you can kind of see it in the video. Hopefully you see what I'm talking about. So what I'm doing is I'm tying one end and then sewing that into place with just some normal thread and a needle, hand sewing it, and then pulling it to wherever I need it next to be next, tying the other end, like cutting off the excess, tying the other end, and then sewing that into place. I decided to knot the ends because it made it easier to sew the yarn into place and made me feel more like it wasn't going to come undone, not the stitching, but like the yarn, because this yarn tends to unravel a bit if you just leave it as is, and I didn't want it to unravel and just fall completely off of the jacket.
Silent nights recalling you, a souvenir of what it could.
Once those fake stitches were sewn into place, I pulled out the white rope, string, whatever it is that was in the hoodie, and measured that out so that I had a strand of yarn that was that long, double knotted it at either end, only one end first, and then pulled the other end through, all the way through, so it looped through the hoodie, and double knotted it at the other end, and finished. That was the altered hoodie. This part was really easy and quick to do. To make her leggings, I used a pair of pants that fit kind of snug on me, like jegging legging kind of pants, or pair of leggings is probably what you should use, and created a pattern off of that. If you don't want to have to create your own pattern though, I do have these available on my store Envy or Etsy. If they're not up yet, they should be soon. Once I had the pattern or pants traced out, I used a ruler to trace on the stripes, and I don't remember the exact measurements for them all. I think the green was about probably about 3 inches, and then the white was about 1 inch, and the purple was probably about half an inch, or the white was 2 inches and the purple was 1 inch. See, I'm so bad at remembering the measurements, but basically measure out it so that each color is equal in sizing. And then I cut that out on the colored fabrics that they're supposed to be cut out on. Make sure the fabric you're using for this is a 4-way stretch. So obviously at this point I've already cut out all of the stripes in the color fabric that I need them to be. I have it so that there's only one seam. The outer seam of the pattern that I made is placed on a fold, and the inner seam is left open because that's the only place I wanted a visible seam to be. But before I sew any of those seams shut or sew anything together, I pin all the stripes together so that I have one full piece of legs. Well, I guess you would have 2 pieces of leg pieces, if that makes any sense. You have 2 legs, so you should have one full piece of the green and white striped leg, and then one full piece of the green, white, and purple striped leg. And I sew all of those stripes together, and then I sew the legs shut and then to each other down the center where it's like at your waist. It's the same exact order that if you've ever sewn a pair of pants before or used a sewing pattern for a pair of pants or a pair of leggings or shorts, it's the same order you sew all of that in. So sew the legs shut and then sew the 2 legs to each other, and then you have a completed pair of pants, or in this case, leggings. Make sure you're using a zigzag strip. Wow, I'm butchering all my words today, I'm so sorry. Make sure you use a zigzag stitch for this. When you're sewing everything on this, make sure it's a zigzag stitch because you want the stitch to stretch with your fabric, and that is the stitch that is made to be used for stretchy fabric. Or use a serger. So something I did, because I'm always a paranoid person who thinks I'm much bigger than I am apparently, is add a whole lot of excess fabric at the seams, and I didn't realize there was that much excess fabric when I originally sewed this. So I had to try on the leggings and pin it together and then repin it where it actually needed to sit. So I removed about 1 inch or 2 from the entire inner seams of my legs, to get it to be tight enough so that it actually sat snug and like a pair of leggings should, rather than be these baggy pants that they were originally, which is a step, if you don't do what I did, you can totally skip, but I'm just explaining what's going on here.
Pick your head up, keep on fighting, living, loving. Make your mind up. If you want it, take it, fly away, soaring high above the clouds. Hear the voices calling out. Oh, you want love. Crash and burn, I found myself beneath the emptiness. Make your mind up. Wanting more, I let it go. Holding on to love.
After the legs were sewn together and they were sewn to each other, I went ahead and then I folded over the top to hem the top, like the waist part of the leggings and the ankle parts of the leggings to make it nice and neat, and that finishes up the leggings. Now we move on to the candy hair pieces. To create the candy hair pieces, I used foam clay, or clay foam? I don't know which order you say that in. Also known as cosplay clay from the website I buy it from, which I have a link below, which is an affiliate link. And if you don't know how affiliate links works, it means if you buy from their site at no extra cost to you, I get a little bit of the proceeds to spend at their site. The proceeds, the prop, sale. I make a little bit back for anybody who buys through my links so that I can then buy from them more stuff. So you should totally do that because it helps me out, and again, it's at no extra cost to you. So if you plan to buy from them or wanting to buy from them anyways, buy through my link because I need more clay. Anyways, I'm taking little pieces of clay and I'm rolling them into sprinkle shapes, little tiny mini disc shapes, and then larger disc shapes that are going to be like the peppermint candy. And then I'm taking two very long dowel shaped pieces of foam. That's the only way I can explain it. Flattening that out a little bit and then twisting it, as you can see me doing here, to make a Twizzler shape or a licorice shape. And I had to make two because I couldn't get one that was going to be long enough for her hair tie piece out of just one roll. Like it was going to be too long. So instead I made two, did that twice, and then I stuck them together later. All these pieces needed about a day to dry, possibly more depending on how thick it was. Like this one needed like a day and a half or so to dry. But once it was dry, I stuck the two ends together and used a heat gun to curl it into the shape that I needed it to be. And then I used wood glue to prime all of these pieces. I think for these pieces I only used about 2, maybe 3 layers of wood glue to prime them, just because it was a hassle to prime so many tiny little pieces. And to kind of help this process, I stuck all of these onto painter's tape. Or here I might be using packaging tape, but painter's tape works too. I should also explain what clay foam is. Basically, it's a clay version of EVA foam. So once it's dried, it works exactly like EVA foam. You can cut it, you can sand it, you can prime it, paint it, use a heat gun to reshape it, or bend it, not fully reshape it, obviously. It's great. And if you don't have access to this, normal clay like polymers clay or even air dry clay will work too. After everything was fully primed, I went ahead and painted it using acrylic paint. So I painted some of the peppermints white and red, other of the peppermints green and brown, and then the sprinkles and little disc pieces all the different colors that she has in her hair, and there was tons and tons and tons of little tiny candy pieces. So much painting to help this like be sped along or be easy to paint. I stuck all of the pieces down to painter's tape, which I had on a piece of paper, so that they wouldn't just move around and I wouldn't have to hold every little tiny piece to paint it. I used a tinier brush after I had painted on the base layer for the peppermints, which was the white and green color, to paint on the stripes, which were the red and the brown color. And once everything was painted, I used a clear glossy spray paint to coat all of the pieces. And again, when I used the spray paint to paint them, I had them stuck down with painter's tape so that they wouldn't just fly around randomly when I was spraying this paint on them. To create the gummy bear pieces, I took real gummy bears and I coated them in clear resin. I'm sure there are gummy bear molds out there somewhere, but I couldn't find any that would get here on such short notice. Like, I didn't bother looking on eBay because I knew it wouldn't arrive in time. So instead, I went out and bought a bag, coated them in resin a couple times, and let that dry. Once everything was dry and ready to be attached to the bobby pins, I attached them to the bobby pins. So I wanted something that was quick and easy. I just used hot glue. This isn't perfect because it will pop off a little bit. And so if you don't want that happening, you might want to find stronger glue. Contact cement might be an option, and I think E6000 might be an option too. I'm not sure if it will eat through foam pieces even if they're primed, but you know, it won't hurt to try. For the large peppermint pieces, I used tiny little pieces of fabric on the back to help them stick down a bit better. But when it came to the smaller pieces, they just had to be stuck on with just hot glue because there's no way it was going to stick with a tiny little piece of fabric. Like, the fabric would have swallowed the entire piece. And that finishes up this cosplay. I'm hoping that this was helpful. I'm sorry if it was a little bit scattered or if I was a little bit scattered brain. I am sick right now, if you couldn't tell from the sound of my voice. But I hope this was helpful anyways. Thanks for watching. Have a lovely day, and good luck on your cosplays. Bye!